Most modern growers believe winter kills soil, but ancient farmers knew better. Long before laboratory soil tests and packaged amendments, people across northern Europe, the Andes, the Fertile Crescent and East Asia understood that soil only dies when biological activity stops. Their solution was not protection from cold, but controlled fermentation before winter arrived. What looks like decay to the untrained eye is actually the moment soil becomes most alive. When fields were prepared correctly in fall, microbial life continued working beneath frost, converting stored organic matter into stable nutrients ready for spring. This knowledge kept land productive for centuries without synthetic inputs, and it remains one of the most overlooked tools in modern soil management. Autumn fermentation worked because cold slows decay, but preserves microbial momentum. Ancient farmers observed that rot and fermentation are not the same process. Rot destroys structure. Fermentation preserves it. By encouraging fermentation in autumn, they ensured organic material broke down just enough to feed microbes without collapsing into, anaerobic sludge. Cooling temperatures slowed aggressive decomposition while allowing beneficial bacteria and fungi to stabilize. This essentially created a living pantry underground. To apply this principle today, the timing matters more than the ingredients. Fermentation inputs must be added after the peak summer heat, but before consistent frost, This window allows microbial communities to establish dominance while temperatures are still biologically active. Once cold sets in, activity slows but does not stop. The soil enters a holding phase rather than a shutdown. Fermented plant matter was layered deliberately rather than buried or exposed. Historical field records and monastic garden texts reveal a consistent pattern. Organic matter was never mixed randomly into soil. Instead, it was layered. Soft greens, chopped stalks, kitchen scraps and manures were lightly fermented before being placed between soil and protective mulch. This layering prevented nutrient loss while maintaining airflow. A practical modern method follows the same logic. Collect fall plant waste and lightly bruise or chop it. So, moisten it until it's damp but not wet, and then you want to pile it loosely for several days to begin fermentation. Once warmth and a sort of sour-sweet smell develop, just spread it across the soil and cover it with straw, leaf litter or, wood shavings. Do not till. The soil will, draw nutrients upward as microbes migrate naturally. Ancient fermentation brews kept soil biology well fed through those cold months. Liquid fermentation wasn't just something reserved for spring feeding, actually. Now, fall brews were a bit different. They were weaker, slower and, really designed for longevity rather than rapid growth. These liquids, in fact, introduced beneficial microbes that would colonize the soil before winter locked in moisture and temperature. To recreate this system, Ferment plant material such as nettle, comfrey or grain chaff in water for 10 to 14 days until active bubbling slows. Strain the liquid and dilute heavily. Apply directly to soil during cool evenings. Historical accounts stress that soil should be moist, but not saturated. This ensured, that microbes entered dormancy gradually, rather than being shocked. Cold weather fermentation, interestingly, preserved nitrogen instead of letting it leach away. One of the greatest advantages of fall fermentation was, nitrogen retention. Ancient farmers understood that raw manure or fresh plant matter applied late in the season often vanished by spring. Fermentation stabilized nitrogen into forms that really resisted leaching. Modern soil, loses enormous fertility during winter runoff. Fermented inputs solve this by binding nitrogen into microbial biomass. Then, when temperatures rise, microbes release nutrients slowly, matching plant demand. This is why, historically, fermented fields greened faster in spring without additional feeding. Winter soil life depended on oxygen channels maintained during fall preparation. Fermentation alone was not enough. Soil needed air. Ancient systems avoided compaction at all costs. Fall preparation included leaving stalks, roots and coarse material intact to create air pathways. Today, this can be applied by cutting crops at soil level rather than pulling roots. Leave root systems intact. Spread fermented material on top and protect with mulch. As roots decay slowly, they become tunnels that maintain oxygen flow through winter. So, here's the thing. The fermented soil entered spring already awake, instead of, needing rescue. Ancient growers often planted directly into thawing ground without tilling, trusting the soil they prepared months earlier. This approach really does reduce spring labour and, eliminates the cycle of emergency fertilization. Soil prepared through fall fermentation behaves like a living organism that rested, not one that died and needed revival. Modern agriculture treats winter as an enemy. Ancient agriculture treated it as storage. Fermentation was the bridge that made this possible. It transformed waste into stability, cold into preservation, and soil into a living system that never stopped working. Understanding fall fermentation is not about romanticizing the past. It's about recovering techniques that were abandoned for convenience, not because they failed. These methods endure because biology has not changed, only our attention has. If this deep historical knowledge strengthens how you view soil, seasons and survival, do consider subscribing to Hydrohaven for more enduring techniques grounded in real history. And, share this guide with those who care about keeping land alive, not just productive.